Hi there and welcome to my channel. Today I'll be reviewing the second episode of Star Trek Discovery's third season. Since this installment is titled Far From Home instead of That Hope Is You Part 2, this is the first time in Star Trek history that an episode whose name ends with the term Part 1 isn't followed by the next episode being a Part 2. I wonder if the second part will be in the show's fourth season. The crew regaining consciousness after the time leap I thought was reminiscent of a scene in Star Trek IV The Voyage Home, when Kirk and his senior officers travel back in time from 2286 to 1986, making a 300-year journey, whereas the leap forwards that Discovery makes between the second season finale Such Sweet Sorrow Part 2 and this episode totals 932 years. I personally like the sparking effects at the start of this episode, and they make for a nice contrast with the much quieter Birds tweets we got at the beginning of the previous episode. It was strange to see Awashikon and Detmer lying with their eyes open despite being unconscious. Discovery's crash landing is somewhat similar to an icy predicament the USS Voyager finds itself in the fifth season Star Trek Voyager episode Timeless. It also reminded me of the Enterprise D's crash landing in the film Star Trek Generations. The focus on Kayla Detmer overcoming shock was great, as she hasn't really been shown like that before. Hopefully, this is foreshadowing a more extensive character arc for her as the third season develops, much like it was with the role of Arium in the show's second season. I like Saru's subdued acknowledgement of the presence of life on the planet they've crash landed on, since it definitely seems very in character for him. It's understandable and even realistic that the episode features the Discovery and its crew recovering, but I honestly found this aspect of the episode quite boring. As this is a new season in a new area of space hundreds of years from basically everything we've regularly known, I was so eager for the series to explore that it made the focus of Discovery's crew getting back on their legs seem repetitive of when they've had to do that in the first two seasons. That said, it was nice to see Culber medically caring for Stamets, since a lot of season 2 was about Stamets caring for Culber. Other than that, the only other characters I found interesting during these sequences were Georgiou and Detmer, and Reno, for the most part, I found particularly annoying. One character who did intrigue me was the cleaner Gene. Personally, I couldn't help but wonder if his name was a tip of the hat to Gene Roddenberry. I was basically ecstatic when it came time for Saru and Tilly to finally leave Discovery, and I loved the swooping aerial shots of the crash-landed ship. However, I didn't think the episode's score emphasised their departure enough. It's cool Discovery's surroundings were given added interest by being established as parasitic ice representing a ticking bomb that the crew had to overcome before sunset, and that there's a discussion about the hugeness of the Saurian visible spectrum. Although I thought the appearances of the Lukat character were intriguing, the fact that the colony turned out to be benevolent I found quite predictable, given that allies are so often introduced as potential foes in Star Trek, and that, in this case, their makeup clearly isn't designed to look monstrous. I did not expect Cal and many of his compatriots, however, to be Khoridan, a species whose only appearance heretofore were in Star Trek Enterprise. I wasn't very keen on the episode's multiple uses of the word shitty. Once was okay, but twice seemed like overkill, but it's great to now have in canon, thanks to this episode, the term programmable matter, describing a process that we also see in the previous episode, and apparently will continue to see as Discovery's third season progresses from here on. Zeta was very effectively introduced as an antagonist, I thought, with a lot of potential, and he was quite well played by Jake Weber. I also liked the handheld camera work in his first scene, making the viewer meanwhile feel apprehensive. I also foresaw the death of Cal before it happened, as he was a relatively disposable character, and it served the plot more to emphasise Zeta's malevolence by killing him off. Ultimately, I didn't like how much of a moustache-twirling villain Zeta was portrayed as, though his extensive vocabulary went slightly towards distinguishing him. However, as Georgiou states, a fancy vocabulary doesn't mean you're scary, it means you have a thesaurus. It was interesting that the term Vajaysh is used in this episode, as it was earlier used in the Short Tracks outing Calypso, and has since been confirmed by Michael Chabon, who wrote that installment, to mean Federation. Georgiou's conflict with Saru about whether to kill Zeta is, in my opinion, too reminiscent of conflicts she's already had with the Starfleet officers. To me, the ending of this episode was obvious and very predictable, with Burnham saving Discovery, but I do like her new look. That said, I don't much like the new disconnect in perception between what Burnham and the audience have separately experienced, though I am looking forward to finding out how this is explored. Hopefully it will be, and I'm hoping too that Zero will return sometime, but have a more interesting role to play in the story, giving his characters some more colour than what was in this episode. Those are my thoughts on Far From Home. Let me know yours in the comments section. Live long and prosper.